Okay, Jam, on today's episode of Ask a Chemist, we have questions about glitter, Jello, oxygen in water and oxygen in the air, and so many more fun things to talk about.
Okay, cool.
Are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hey, I'm Melissa.
I'm Jam.
And I'm a chemist.
And I'm not.
And welcome to Chemistry for Your Life.
The podcast to help you understand the chemistry of your everyday life. Bonus / Ask a Chemist edition.
I could tell you were going somewhere weird with that, so I did not chime in.
Yeah, I just said it weird on purpose.
Did you?
Yeah.
You just wanted the spotlight all for yourself, maybe?
No. I just kind of wanted to make you keep you on your toes.
Keep me on my toes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely did.
I mean, I'll get the spotlight right back to you though, because I don't know the answer to any of these questions. So it's Ask a Chemist. What if it was like Ask a Not Chemist? And it's like, hey guys, have you ever asked someone who doesn't know the answer to stuff?
Ask a person on the street. Isn't there a game show that's that?
I guess
Man on the
so,
Street
yeah.
or something?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Or like Jimmy Kimmel does it a lot, where asks very basic geography questions and stuff like that to people on the street. So yeah, I guess there is an appetite for that, but that is not what we are doing here.
I would do badly at that geometry one.
I feel like I'm pretty good at that kind of I wouldn't call it trivia because it matters, but that level of stuff. It's like
that level of information.
Yeah, it's not way deep knowledge, but it's like, which country is this? Or
I have a hard time even knowing where the different states in the United States are at.
Yeah, for some reason, that's the kind of stuff I'm like, I need to know that so that I can win points in a game at some point, a trivia game, you know?
I went on my road trip. I went from Texas to Oklahoma to Colorado to Wyoming and then Montana. And when we were going there, I texted my family and was like, just pass through Oklahoma, Colorado, and then blah, blah, blah. And my sister was like, I didn't even know that was a connection of states you could go through. And I was like, neither did I.
Yeah. Well, especially that part of Oklahoma, it's their thin panhandle does kind of confuse.
I do think it was 1 hour of driving in Oklahoma, and that was it. But yeah.
Okay, are you ready for the first question?
I'm ready.
I will have a story to tell you about this this question. So this question is in response to one of the reels we posted on Instagram, where we talked about the reduction of foodborne illnesses due to milk after pasteurization was a thing. So here's the question from Ryan P, someone we know, IRL. Was this due primarily to the increased availability of pasteurized milk, or did introducing rules around pasteurization also increase standards for raw milk? I saw him ask that. And we both know him, but he works at the co-working space that I also work at. He's there every single day, and I'm there
so you're
3 days a week.
I'm basically a chemist.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I did give the caveat. I was like, I can answer the part of this question that is from the larger episode, because he didn't listen to the whole episode yet. He just saw that reel. And so I was like, I can tell you one of the things that Melissa herself said in the full episode, but definitely stay tuned for the Q&R where she responds directly to this. So I tried to tell him a couple of things that I remembered. And so now him and I are both very invested in, I would already be interested, but because I saw this question, sometimes I don't see the questions, I'm very invested in your answer.
In this answer. Well, what did you tell him that you remembered? Do you remember what you remembered?
I told him that I wasn't sure if I was understanding his question correctly, but he said, did introducing rules around pasteurization also increase standards for raw milk? What I told him was that it basically ended up being that before pasteurization, everyone's drinking raw milk because there wasn't other kind. And then it just drastically decreased everyone drinking it.
Yeah.
Especially in places, once it became hey, you must do this. So I told him, I was like, it's not really oh, there's this kind of milk, and we also increase the standards for raw milk. It's this is the increased standard.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's it's the switch from instead of raw milk, this is what's being drank now. And that's where the change comes from.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it partly answered, but I was not sure initially when I read it if that's what he was really asking or not.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it kind of was.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. And also it's like, okay, well, there's not really a way to increase standards for raw milk. Maybe you could for the hygiene of the situation the cow is being milked in, but we also talked about how there's bacteria sometimes in the cow's milk.
Yes. And I did tell him that actually. I told him, I was like, in the episode, Melissa talked about 2 different ways that bacteria gets in. Mm-hmm. One is the environmental, and like you could make a case for the fact that the average, dairy farm today is going to have better standards of that than they did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Just we know more, we have better stuff, the types of equipment that are less chance of microbes or whatever, better standards for cleaning, whatever you want to say. But that would only affect those environmental sources.
Even if you could make it perfectly sterile, which it's not.
Yeah.
It would only affect environmental.
So I told him, I was like, there's some bacteria already in it from the living organism.
Yeah, which if you think about it too hard, it's like gross.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. But I also I broke my own rule and I did research for this episode.
Nice.
And I did find a statistic that I wanted to share with you, which was in the United States, outbreaks associated with dairy consumption cause on average 760 illnesses per year.
Okay.
And 22 hospitalizations per year. And that's now that we have pasteurized milk. Unpasteurized milk consumed by only 3.2% of the population and unpasteurized cheese consumed by only 1.6% of the population caused 96% of illnesses caused by contaminated dairy products.
Got it. Okay.
So of all of those illnesses, the 760 illnesses per year and the 22 hospitalizations, only 4% of those came from pasteurized milk. So that is a good indication, I think, think about how many people drink pasteurized milk versus unpasteurized. It's a huge, huge number of people that drink pasteurized milk versus unpasteurized is only 3.2% of the population. But they have the majority of those illnesses. So probably like 700, and I don't know what 90% of that is off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I guess 10% of it would be 7.76.
Yeah.
So basically about 700 of those illnesses are from people who drink raw milk every year. And that is only 3.2% of the population of milk drinkers.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
there's
it's
not that
definitely
many,
disproportionate.
Yeah. Not that many of them relative to the whole overall population.
Yeah.
So the risk isn't like insanely high, but it's also like way higher if you do.
Yeah.
But still not like, I don't know. It's kind of hard.
Yeah. Yes. And that was something I sent this to Ryan too. And he's like, oh, overall, a lot less illnesses than you'd think.
Yeah.
And I agree. Yeah. Overall, a lot less illnesses than you think, but also why risk it when you don't have to?
Yeah.
Especially because we know there's not a ton of benefits from it.
Right. And that's probably where people do end up doing it and thinking it's worth the risk if they think there's some benefit. Yeah.
But if you get it pasteurized on a low temperature for a long time, it shouldn't have very much of an impact at all.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay. Good question, Ryan.
Very interesting. The next question is from Letila S, one of our Chem community members. And, very good question. What makes Jello Jello?
Okay, I didn't look this one up, but I think Jello, I know from what I hear on the streets that Jello is gelatin.
Mm.
And I'm guessing that gelatin is similar to like pectin that makes jelly. Remember we talked about that?
Oh, yeah, we did.
Which I think is just like a polymer, right? Is it a protein polymer maybe? So my guess is that gelatin is the main thing and it makes some kind of polymer gel. And that's my guess. That's a total guess. I think we'd have to do a whole episode on it.
That's super interesting. Yeah. Huh.
That's my guess. And I've heard it's also, people are like, gelatin's from cow bones or pig bones or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but if that was true, then it would definitely be some kind of protein that makes the gel. But that's all I can guess. That's chemistry off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Off the top of my head. But that was a fun thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Jello. This next question is from Jesus R on Instagram. How is the oxygen in water different from the oxygen in the air?
It's just how it's binded, how it's bound, how it's bonded. That's the word I'm looking for. It's just how it's bonded. So oxygen in the air is O2. So it's 2 oxygen atoms that are bonded together. And oxygen in water is H2O. So 1 oxygen with 2 hydrogens bonded to it. And so that the atoms themselves are the same. Oxygen atoms are oxygen atoms. But what you combine them with is what makes the big difference. So if you combine them with 2 other hydrogens, they're going to have really different properties than if they're just up in the air.
Right.
Sorry, then if they're just bound with themselves.
Yeah. And I guess like any other thing, when we talk about it being either gas or liquid, we thought about just the closeness of those atoms together, which is kind of interesting to think about because like, oh yeah, it is oxygen in both places, but you're talking about 2 different like things it's combined with.
Well, there is also oxygen in the air in the form of water vapor.
Right.
There are water molecules in the air and there's O2 molecules in the air. So I just made an assumption of what he was talking about. But
yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? But that's it. It's just all about how its electrons are overlapping with other things. That's it.
And I honestly think like the oxygen in water, I like how it tastes more than I like the oxygen in the air. Like,
have you seen they have oxygen tanks now? They're like little puffs that you can get of oxygen.
Interesting.
They're supposed to be good for altitude sickness, but I've never tried it.
Huh.
I didn't have to try it because we drove slowly
So
up to where we went.
Yeah. I've had altitude sickness before. Not so fun. This question. Ooh.
But also, though, some of the oxygen things are flavored, and Rhett and Link did a whole episode where they tried flavored oxygen.
Interesting.
So you were trying to make an absurd joke, but it's actually kind of a real joke.
Yeah, it's kind of real. I guess I was talking about the unflavored oxygen. Just kind of like the regular.
Yeah.
You know, the OG kind.
Also, it's like flavored oxygen is really just oxygen mixed in with other molecules that are flavored. They're not actually flavoring
the
oxygen.
Which makes you realize that they're never actually flavoring anything. You know? Or just adding something else that does have a flavor.
That's so true.
Like, I'm not flavoring
water.
Just, yeah.
Wow. Trippy. Okay.
Speaking of trippy, Gypsy C on Instagram asked, what is glitter?
Dude, glitter, this is my favorite. Okay, there's a long time ago. Do you know about this?
Actually, yeah, I think we talked about this before.
There's a New York Times article that came out like 2010 is my guess. Maybe even before that. I tried to pull it up. 2018? What? 2018? That can't be right. I can't believe it's that recent. Anyway, so in 2018, I guess an article came out in the New York Times about what is glitter. And then I was on Reddit and somebody was like, what's your favorite small mystery? And this one came up and it's like really hard to find out what glitter is. And their biggest industry like is a secret.
Yeah.
Their biggest industry that they use glitter in. And it just really bothered me. They were like, we can't tell you. It's kind of like, you know, when a friend is like, well, someone likes you, but I can't tell you who, or something like that. Okay. It's like, it's really common and you see it all the time in everyday life, but it's just, I just can't tell you. And it really bothered me. And so I don't know what glitter is and I don't know what I know some of the stuff it's used for, but it's apparently we don't know what the biggest consumer is. Anyway, so there's a Glitterex website is where they share all the different ways that glitter is used. It's like used in paint. It's used in all kinds of things. So, but I don't know for sure what it is. If I had to guess what it was, I think it is some kind of either plastic with a coating on it or metal. But I think the plastic with a coating is more likely. That's my best guess.
Yeah, interesting. Like, you think maybe like they can make these plastic sheets with coating and just like grind it up or cut up into tiny little pieces, something like that. Yeah,
that's kind of what I think.
I can see that.
But that's just a guess.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know.
Chemistry off the cuff. Or maybe it is like the song. It's like all that glitters is gold. It's like maybe It is just gold. You know?
That's what I meant when I said metal.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'd be like, yes, and it's a specific metal. Specific gold.
And it's specifically gold.
Yeah.
I got a little distracted because I was trying to half read that article to see if I could find out if they gave any. I couldn't remember if they gave any information specifically about metal.
Yeah, we did talk about that. I can't remember why or what. Must have been back when that came out, but like I must have just been like at a hangout with our friends or something. But yeah, man, wow, interesting.
I feel like it was longer ago than 2018.
That was a long time ago. It was like 6 years ago.
Not.
Are you ready for another question?
Yes, I'm totally ready.
This is a comment on our YouTube video of one of our episodes about the Northern Lights from Autoclave.
Autoclave,
sorry.
That's a thing that you use to sterilize instruments.
Which means that clave is an instrument.
What?
Yeah.
What did you say?
A clave is an instrument.
What's a clave?
It's short for something else. Clave. Dang it, what is it? Huh.
Well, autoclave, I think is how you say it. Is the thing for sterilizing instruments in like biology.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah. I read it as clave because of the way it's said for the instrument, meaning musical one. Gotcha. I got to figure out what that actually is short for now.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, I think it's a type of organ kind of thing. Again, the musical kind. Is the
wow, there's a lot of crossovers there.
The comment on the Northern Lights thing is this how infrared spectroscopy works?
Okay, so infrared spectroscopy is something that's used in a lot of science labs and things. That basically when you shine light, you shine light on molecules and light is energy. Mm-hmm. And so the molecules will absorb that light. And typically they kind of absorb it in characteristic amounts based on the functional groups, which we've talked about functional groups a few times now. So if there are atoms arranged in a specific way, they'll kind of absorb the energy in these like characteristic areas. And we can take that information and put it out on a piece of paper, basically, that shows us like, oh, it absorbed this one here, and this one here, and this one here. So we're guessing that there are specific groups of atoms present. And so I would say it's not like the Northern Lights, because the Northern Lights, it was about the like giving that light back off.
Oh, yeah.
But this is just about the absence of, like, spectroscopy is looking at what light was absorbed. So what are we missing, kind of?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not, I feel like it's pretty different. But that's just a little bit about what spectroscopy is in general.
Interesting.
Spectroscopy is shining light on things and it telling you information, kind of. That's the most simple definition I can think of.
Yeah, good question. Yeah,
thanks, Autoclave. Sorry I yawned real big just then. It's not because your question was boring.
So we're doing chemistry at night.
That's right.
Okay, this one came through our website, which we love to see, from Rachel E. Follow up from the recent re-release about apples oxidizing to protect themselves. I hear that wheat berries oxidize after being milled and lose nutrients. That's why I mill my own flour fresh. Is the flour darkening from oxidation why flours get bleached? And are whole wheat flours preserved from vitamin C being added?
Okay, so there's a lot of questions there. I did not do research and don't know off the top of my head why flours get bleached and why whole wheat flours are, if they have vitamin C added. But I will say that the information about the whole grains oxidizing is true. Whole grain flour has like half the shelf life as other flour as it's processed.
I did not know that.
Because it's got the whole grain, so it's more susceptible to oxidation than more refined flour, which already like does some stuff to prevent that from happening. So I did some research on that, just very little. And it did say that the short shelf life, hang on, let me see if I can find it. the oxidation can impact the texture and the nutritional value. There's like a few things that the oxidation could impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like, oh, that's so interesting. So yes, stability of whole grain flour is not as good as other flours. But I don't think it's like stability of whole grain flour. All flours come from whole grain eventually. But it's just like, do you just mill whole grain flour and not really process it, minimally process it and put it on the shelf? Then because it's been less processed, it's going to break down faster. So all wheat oxidizes the same. Does that kind of make sense what I just said?
I think so.
So it's not because it's whole grain that it oxidizes faster. It's because other wheats are processed more.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because all flour comes from wheat, whole grain wheat originally.
Right.
I think.
Well, I guess there is flour from other plants. It's
right.
Yeah,
I meant all wheat flour.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But if they process it more, they basically are just doing things to make it shelf stable for longer.
Right. Got it. Okay. Interesting. Do you want me to jump down here first? You had this right here.
Oh, I did want to say that I was maybe going to do an episode on why flowers get bleached.
Ah.
So there's a potential for an episode of that coming. Okay, so there were a few things I wanted to note. And one is if you're an educator or a student and you want to learn about a specific topic, we do have a database now. If you go to chem4life.com, there's a resources for educators tab. And there is a database of episodes with keywords how often that keywords appears. So you can look and see like, oh, I want to do intermolecular forces. It appears 50 times in this episode. This is a good episode for intermolecular forces. So that is a database we have to help students and teachers.
Nice.
And then I also wanted to share a little thing that Abby on Instagram sent, a study about collagen. And it was basically a study that showed that collagen intake is not significantly different from other proteins in muscle building after a workout, which is kind of what I suspected. But then I went and looked at the study and there was a few other things that it was like, oh, it is statistically different in this. And then I went and looked at the methods and it was like the options were this collagen protein or a non-caloric. And I think it had no nutritional value, but I'm not positive. But it didn't seem like it was another type of protein. And I was like, that's weird. Why would you compare collagen to no protein? And maybe I misinterpreted it, but that led me down the path to go look at the affiliations. And so even in this study, which the person who posted it on Instagram was like, all these other studies are heavily influenced by the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this study that said that collagen intake is not significantly different from other proteins in muscle building after a workout, the person who posted, they put a conflict of interest and funding source. And initially it says no external funding sources were used to conduct this study. But 2 authors have received research grants, consulting fees, and speaking honoraria, or a combination of those for their research on the impact of nutrition on muscle metabolism, which included companies. So they got paid from companies that produce collagen. And not necessarily for this research. This research wasn't funded by it, but I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's like those authors... Researchers themselves have been,
And another one of the researchers was awarded a research grant from the Collagen Research Institute, which I don't know if that's like if that's a company that produces collagen or what, but
yeah.
So even in this, that initially seems like, oh, they're saying that collagen doesn't do anything too exciting. Even there might be ties buried in somewhere to some industry. And it makes me think of that study that was published. It was a review of studies that were published from, I think it was funding from soda companies versus not, and how you were just less likely to publish negative results, like something that wasn't going to be beneficial for the company. It wasn't that they weren't finding them. It was just that they were much less likely to be published if that was the funding source. Or if there was any kind of, additional thing. So I feel like that is why it's always important to look and see who is funding the studies that you're reading and citing.
Makes total sense. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for sharing that, Abby. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about where that collagen comes from. I do think, though, the thing that they said that like collagen basically acts like most other proteins of just being broken down in the gut and not necessarily contributing extraordinarily to the development of collagen in our skin and body. I think that makes sense. It's like that's what all protein does. And I take collagen protein because I'm allergic to whey protein. I have like lactose intolerance, but if you're taking collagen for other reasons, it might not be having the impact that you think it is going to.
Right. Huh.
So there's just not evidence. It's controversial.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, and do you want to finish by reading up those nice reviews?
I'd love to. So we got, if we have some to share, we'll share some reviews, feedback, little notes we get that aren't really a question, but just a little note. And these made our day to get. Matthew G on YouTube said, I came from your YouTube short, and wow, this is such a well-produced podcast. It was fascinating listening, and I'm so happy I found this pod. Matthew, we're also very glad you found our podcast. And we are, we're excited that you're fascinated, and we too are fascinated by chemistry. So welcome to the club.
Yeah, that's so cute. We read it out loud to each other. I was like, did you hear this? This is so nice.
Do you want to read Laura's?
Sure. One from Laura on Apple Podcast said, the best. How has it taken me so long to find this? Exactly what I've been searching for. Easy listening and so informative, which I thought was cute. And one of my students told me that she listened to the podcast in the car, and her aunt started listening, and her aunt was like, this is really interesting. And now her aunt separately listens.
Nice.
So
the more the merrier.
The more the merrier. Anyway, that's a fun little dive down into some of our questions from our listeners.
Very, very cool. And thank y'all for sending your questions. If you have questions, sometimes they get turned into a full episode, like we referenced today. Some of these might turn into that, like a Jello episode, something like that. So send us your questions, or they could be, really good one that's quick, off-the-cuff chemistry stuff. In this episode, we love receiving those. Send them to us on our website at chemforyourlife.com. That's chemforyourlife.com to share your thoughts and ideas and questions with us. If you'd like to help us keep our show going and contribute to cover the cost of making it, you can join our super cool Chem community of patrons on patreon.com/chemforyourlife. You get perks. You get to see some behind the scenes stuff. You get to have an ad-free version of the show, an ad-free feed, stuff like that. Ways for us to say thank you for supporting the show and keeping it free for everybody else. If you're not able to do that, you can still help us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app, rating, writing, review on Apple Podcasts, those, and also rating, writing, review on Spotify, and subscribing on YouTube. Those things help us share chemistry with even more people, help us be able to be found by others who are looking for chemistry.
And we have shorts on YouTube and TikTok. So if you go to our page and engage with that, that helps us out there too. All right. Well, I want to give a special shout out to every one of those financial supporters on Patreon and to thank them personally. Thank you all so much for making our show happen and making it feasible for us to continue doing Chemistry for Your Life every single week. So those supporters that I want to thank are Chelsea M, Dorien V, Scott B, Jessie R, Ciara L, John T, Avishai B, Bri M, Brian K, Carol R, Chris and Claire S, Chelsea B, Derek L, Elizabeth P, Emerson W, Hunter R, Jacob T, Kristina G, Katrina H, Letila S, Lyn S, Melissa P, Nichole C, Rachel R, Sarah M, Stephen B, Suzanne P, Timothy P, Venus R, Erica B, Cullyn R, and Jeannette N. Thank you all so much for everything you do to make Chemistry for Your Life accessible to even more people.
And we actually do have a reference from this episode. So if you want to look for the reference from this episode, you can check the show notes or the description of the video on YouTube.
Yay, chemistry!
Yay, chemistry! Yay, ask
questions.
a chemist!